Chapter 497, Yuna and Naruto vs. Madara and Hashirama. Let's dance. Yuna heard Madara's yell as his presence grew even more domineering, making her smile. Meanwhile, the shinobi of the allied shinobi forces felt like a mountain was pressing down on them. Having two legendary shinobi on the level of Madara and Hashirama charging at you was no joke. Some of them were about to regain their bearing and prepare themselves for combat, but Yuna's voice echoed over the battlefield before anyone could do so. I have some advice for all shinobi gathered here. All eyes were focused on Yuna, expecting her to say something motivational, but she went in the complete opposite direction. If you do not have the necessary power to kill a cage-level shinobi, then... Yuna bent her legs and put more strength in them, preparing herself for the confrontation. Run. Boon. Yuna jumped towards Madara with so much force that the ground underneath her feet was obliterated, creating a small crater. The duo met, both had their right fist reeled back, and not even a second later, the two fists collided, causing another shockwave. Yes, you will definitely be able to dance with me. Ha ha ha, a dance of death and carnage, I. The duo's fists met dozens of times within a second, and moments later, Hashirama appeared next to Madara. The duo's eyes briefly met, and they were instantly in sync. They might have never fought side by side, but they had fought each other for decades, so cooperating was child's play. One might ask why the mighty and proud Madara Uchiha would be willing to team up with Hashirama. That question is answered rather quickly due to Hashirama blocking a sneak attack from Naruto against Madara. This wasn't 2 1v1 fights, it was a 2v2. At first, Oanoki wanted to scold Yuna for saying something so demoralizing to his troops, but now he understood why she did so. Those four are on another level. Yes, as those four fought, every clash sending powerful shockwaves, Oanoki realized that this was on another level. Others might not be able to tell what was going on, but he could. They are just testing the water. In their eyes, the current display of power is no big deal. Gaara, we should do what she said. This is no battle an ordinary shinobi should participate in. Gaara, who was about to say the same, nodded his head in understanding and quickly organized the retreat of his troops. However, Gaara and Oanoki didn't move a single centimeter. As Yuna said, those who can kill a cage could stay, which is exactly what this duo decided to do. Meanwhile, the match continued as Yuna, Naruto, Madara, and Hashirama expertly weaved their attack into each other, frequently blocking attacks for their combat partner. While Naruto had the lowest combat experience, Yuna had the greatest, easily offsetting the problem. After around 5 minutes of pure taijutsu fighting, Madara and Hashirama jumped backward. Madara made the horse hand sign and took a deep breath. Fire style, great fire annihilation. A sea of flames shot out of his mouth and towards Yuna and Naruto, spreading over hundreds of meters. Oanoki couldn't help but pale when he saw that attack. It was rather obvious now why Yuna didn't want the allied shinobi forces to remain here. Just the stray fire of the fight in front of him could deal devastating damage. When Naruto saw the flame sea approaching Yuna and him, he gathered massive amounts of wind chakra on his right hand and lifted it up. As soon as the chakra density was to his satisfaction, Naruto slashed his hand down like a sword, resulting in a monstrous wind blade shooting towards the sea of fire. Wind style, massive wind blade. Too short. The two attacks collided. Surprisingly, the two attacks barely interacted with each other, as Naruto's wind blade was simply flying through Madara's attack and parted the sea of flames in the process, allowing Yuna and Naruto to easily evade the attack without even moving. Madara frowned when he saw the wind blade splitting his flame sea, but before he could do something to counter it, Hashirama had already started moving and slammed his hands on the ground moments later. With style, great forest emergence. Dozens of trees sprouted out of the ground around him and smashed into Naruto's jutsu. Although the wind blade managed to cut through a few trees, it diminished and vanished relatively quickly. Now, Yuna and Naruto were back on the defensive, and this time, Yuna decided to make a move as the temperature around her started decreasing. Ha ha ha, it's been a while since I could enjoy your wood, Hashirama. This time it's even bigger than the last time. Ice style, majestic heavenly infinite pillar creation. The ground surrounding Yuna was covered in ice instantly, and moments later, gigantic ice pillars shot out of it and collided with Hashirama's trees. As his trees were frozen and crushed by Yuna's ice, more and more trees kept appearing, crushing Yuna's ice. The conflict lasted for about 30 seconds before both stopped supplying chakra to their respective jutsas, making them stop at the same time. By now, one side of the battlefield was fully covered by frozen trees and ice, while the other was overgrown with trees and had broken ice pillars covering the ground. Madara couldn't help but be impressed when he saw that. After all, so far, he was the only one who could go against Hashirama's wood style. In regards to the clearly intended sexual innuendo, he ignored it. Ha ha ha, good. Let's stop the warm-up and get to business. As he said that, he activated his Sharingan while flaring his chakra, causing the ground to crack. Hashirama smiled wryly at his battle-thirsty friend but prepared himself to get serious as well. Although he wasn't as bad as Madara, he certainly wouldn't say no to a proper fight. Meanwhile, Oanoki could feel some despair. That was merely a warm-up for Madara. Are we doomed? Oanoki glanced at Yuna and Naruto to figure out how they reacted to such an outrageous statement, but to his surprise, both of them nodded in agreement. Yep, let's go. Since it has been a while for both of you, I thought I might at least give you a proper chance to warm up. This much should have been enough. As Yuna said that, an ice armor covered her body, while a massive two-handed sword appeared in her hand. A crazy smile appeared on her face as her battle thirst flooded the battlefield. Yup, I'm also ready to kick it up a notch. As soon as those words left Naruto's mouth, a thin layer of rampaging when chakra covered his body, shredding everything that came too close to him. The fight had just begun. Chapter 498, Yuna's strongest jutsu. Powerful explosions echoed over the battlefield as trees were constantly emerging from the ground just to be frozen over by ice or sliced by wind. Similarly, the emerging ice was frequently crushed or repelled by crimson flames. Amidst the devastating attacks, four figures were constantly zooming about, expertly weaving through the incoming attacks while continually trying to get an advantageous position. Madara couldn't help but frown a little when he realized that his Sharingan did very little in this fight. While Naruto at least twitched once before he broke out of his genjutsu, Yuna didn't react in the slightest. In fact, after Madara tried to put her under genjutsu the first time, she held eye contact as much as possible with a mocking smile on her face, annoying him greatly. Additionally, Madara's Sharingan couldn't predict the movement of Naruto's chakra armor nor Yuna's in general. Nonetheless, Madara was immensely enjoying himself. This was precisely what he craved. Rather than destroying a large army with overwhelming force, fighting someone worthy of his power was much more fun. The four people separated again, forming two groups of two. While Yuna and Madara had battle-crazed smiles on their faces, Naruto and Hashirama wore more reserved facial expressions. Well, considering Kurama's desire to beat up Hashirama, Naruto's facial expression didn't appear to be too human either. Ha ha ha, what a good dance. How about this move? Madara clapped his hands together, forming the rat sign, while his eyes changed and turned into the Manjikyu Sharingan. At the same time, chakra covered his body, forming the upper torso of a human that quickly mimicked Madara's hand movement. Additionally, a second Susanoo formed, mirroring the first. Oi, aren't you pushing this too far, Madara? Hearing Hashirama's words, a crazed smile appeared on Madara's face. No, Hashirama, this will show me how long I can enjoy this dance. Meanwhile, Oanoki spectated the fight with awe on his face. Only now did he truly understand why Tsunade allowed Yuna to act so rampant, because she had the qualifications to act as she saw fit due to her strength alone. The title of Kage held no meaning for her due to her surpassing the weight it carries by far. Oanoki noticed that Yuna, Naruto, Madara, and Hashirama were all looking upwards, and when he followed their gazes, he could only pale in terror. Just now, the clouds split, revealing a genuinely colossal meteor descending from the sky directly towards Yuna and Naruto. Eyes that the power of a god. However, hearing his own words, Oanoki gritted his teeth in anger. Did I just decide to give up? Since when was my heart so fragile? No. I possess the will of stone and will never give up. Keisuke Dono, let's go. If the four of us combine our strengths, we will be able to stop this attack. However, Gaara was still indifferent and had his arms crossed in front of his chest. He glanced at Oanoki before shaking his head. You still don't understand it, Tsukikage Dono. Understand? What is there to understand? Since our two powers combined are perfect for stopping this, we should help them. Gaara could only shake his head as he looked at Yuna, who currently eyed the incoming meteor in glee. This will be a good lesson for you, Tsukikage Dono. Witness it. Witness what kind of existence Yuna Uzumaki is. Oanoki was just about to ask Gaara what he was talking about when loud laughter echoed over the battlefield. Ha ha ha, what the hell, Madara? We have met like 30 minutes ago, and you are already taking out your balls. That's the kind of degeneracy I'm into. Oanoki almost face-planted when he heard Yuna's yell. Impossible, she still isn't taking this seriously. Gaara could only chuckle in amusement as he focused on whatever Yuna planned to do. Meanwhile, Madara and Hashirama were also close to face-planting, while Naruto could only chuckle in amusement. Anyway, as soon as she finished speaking, she flared her chakra, intermixing it with Kurama's, and slapped her hands on the ground, turning it into solid ice. Ice style, ascension of the heaven-propping divine pillar. A circular field of ice in front of Yuna started glowing, and moments later, a monstrous ice pillar grew out of the ground, its diameter around 50% bigger than the meteor's, causing everyone's eyes to widen in surprise. For once, Yuna's outrageous technique name seemed to come true as a colossal pillar rose from the ground, easily deserving the moniker of heaven-propping. However, as soon as the pillar started rising, Naruto felt like something was off. Why did Nasen choose such a weird angle? If it grows like that, it won't hit the meteor's center. No way, don't tell me. The ice pillar collided with the side of the meteor, and as soon as the two attacks collided, Yuna's ice engulfed the meteor, turning it into a gigantic ice ball, stopping Madara's attack after a few seconds that were filled with the sound of ice slowly cracking. Madara couldn't help but be impressed by Yuna actually stopping his attack. Truly impressive. However, what will you do about the second one? Another meteor of equal size broke through the clouds and quickly approached the first. Ha ha ha, witness one of my most secret jutsu. Yuna asserted her will on her ice, making it shift and slightly move the caught meteorite to the side, preventing the second one from hitting the first. Yet again, a meteor collided with Yuna's ice pillar, resulting in the same phenomenon as the previous time. It was stopped and frozen after threatening to break Yuna's ice pillar for a few seconds. Now, both meteors were trapped next to each other, while being propped up by a gigantic ice pillar. Seriously, Nasan? Was this necessary? What the hell? There is no way she didn't block my jutsu like that on purpose. Ha ha ha, she sure played you, Madara. He ha ha ha. Ha ha ha. It's good that you finally understood, Oanoki. As everyone's words of disbelief echoed over the battlefield, madness-ridden laughter escaped Yuna's mouth. Ha ha ha, witness my strongest jutsu. Ice-Earth combination style, descent of the divine cock and balls. Chapter 499, just let go of your pride. The Great Shinobi Alliance's command room was doused in silence as everyone looked at the massive chakra accumulation that clearly formed something phallic. When Madara's first meteor broke through the clouds and entered the Alliance's sensing range, people almost soiled their pants. Surprisingly, an even bigger attack managed to stop the meteor, causing them to sigh in relief, just to sense another meteor breaking through the clouds. Now that the emotional rollercoaster was over, they could only sigh in relief. Moments later, Tsunade stealthily looked around the room, and when she noticed that everyone was still spellbound looking at Yuna's DI the dick Yuna created, she stealthily took out a small flask and took a sip. Feeling that familiar burning in her throat, she could only sigh in satisfaction. She took another glance at Yuna's creation, causing her to chuckle little, which put everyone's gaze on her. Hee, Yuna sure isn't dicking around, is she? One of A's veins almost burst when he heard Tsunade's words. He raised his fist and smashed it on the table, causing a small dent to appear. Damn it. Is there anything this woman takes seriously? Can't she act more serious for once? Ma, what are you saying, Reikich Dono? I know she is usually rather lax, but no matter how you look at it, everything around her is pretty stiff right now. At first, I wondered what kind of nonsense Tsunade was talking about. Moments later, he realized that she made another dick joke, almost causing him to descend into a rage-induced rampage. However, before that could happen, Tsunade lifted her hand with a severe expression. I hoped that was the sign that she was finally willing to give a proper answer. Tsunade paused for a short moment, presumably gathering her thoughts, and then started speaking. You are looking at this situation from the wrong perspective, Reikich Dono. I have been dealing with Yuna for over 3 years now, and... As soon as Tsunade said how long she had been dealing with Yuna, her eye glazed over as she stared into the distance. Reikich Dono. Are you all right? Naturally, I was confused by Twande's sudden change. Although he had no idea what happened, he couldn't help but feel a little bit of pity for her. When Shizune saw Tsunade's change of mood, she sighed deeply and approached her while taking out a small bottle from her sleeve and opening it. She held it under Tsunade's nose for a short moment, resulting in clarity returning to her eyes. Tsunade snatched the little bottle away at lightning speed and took a sip. As a result, she smacked her lips in satisfaction. Ha tilde, that's the good stuff tilde. While Shizune looked at Tsunade in pity, I had not the slightest clue what was going on in front of him. Tsunade noticed the rather weird mood, and after pondering for a short moment, she resumed speaking. Anyway, as I previously said, you are looking at this from the wrong perspective. It's not that Yuna is goofing around because she doesn't care about this war, she does it because she can do so without risking losing this war. She knows exactly what she can and what she can't do. I frowned when he heard Tsunade's words. Even if Yuna might be capable of winning while playing tricks like that, he still would prefer her to take this seriously. Tsunade saw the look on A's face and could only shake her head. I had been the Reikage for a while now, so he found it only natural that people would listen to him. Unfortunately for him, the lofty title of Cage had no meaning for Yuna. By now, Tsunade had a very firm grasp on Yuna's mindset, so she knew that to be the case. You still don't get it, Reikage Dono. To Yuna, your opinion is insignificant. The premise of might makes right is rather firmly engraved into her bones, and as long as you are weaker than her and not close to her, she might listen to your suggestions, but never to your orders. In fact, I'm pretty sure she won't listen to anybody's orders, no matter who they are. I could only grit his teeth when Tsunade finished speaking. I'm not weaker than her. Although A said those words with clenched teeth, Tsunade still heard him, causing her to snort in disdain while looking at him with utter contempt. Then go out there and fight. Push those two aside and face Madara Uchiha and Hashirama Senju by yourself. Let us witness your fight with the god of shinobi and the one who is almost equal to him. I clenched and unclenched his fists before averting his eyes from Tsunade and walking away. He may be prideful and arrogant, but he was not delusional enough to believe that he could fight on that battlefield. Yuna, Naruto, Madara, and Hashirama were all so far above him in power, it wasn't even funny. While I was walking away, Tsunade said a few more words. You should let go of your useless pride. In front of overwhelming power, pride is meaningless. I paused for a moment as he pondered Tsunade's advice. In the end, he simply shook his head. There is no way I can just let go of my pride. I have ruled Komodo for over 10 years now, and I will never acknowledge two little brats just like that. Report. We have a request from Yuna Uzumaki-sama. I sneered when he heard that as his somewhat down mood lessened instantly. Pa. All that talk about how strong she is and how she has everything under control, and then she requests reinforcement minutes later. Ridiculous. Despite the contempt he was feeling, I still reacted quickly to the report. After all, it was true that it would end horribly if Madara and Hashirama were to be set free on the battlefield. What is it? Tell me. Yuna Uzumaki-sama requested to she. I couldn't help but glare at the person making the report. Whose shinobi is this? He can't even make a proper report. Out with it already. Why yes. Although she hadn't thought about a name yet, as she wants to be the one to name the monument she has just created. Eerie silence covered the room, only interrupted by an occasional snicker and the sound of someone drinking from a bottle. I sighed deeply as he glanced at Tsunade. Letting go of my pride, huh? Seems like she had done so a long time ago. I looked at the messenger, and after another deep sigh, he simply shrugged his shoulders. Sure, she can do it. The messenger nodded his head and swiftly went back to his post. I felt like he had forgotten something important, but no matter how deeply he thought about it, the answer wouldn't appear in his mind. After about 5 minutes of thinking, he finally understood what was bothering him. Wait a moment. She wants to name it. Is that thing permanent? Wait, isn't her fight in the land of lightning? I don't want that kind of monument in my country. The other people in the room only awkwardly averted their gazes from him. Especially those from Konoha, who knew that Yuna permanently installed a snowstorm near the village before or twice. Chapter 500, it begins. While everyone in the command center was still in slight disbelief, Yuna was genuinely suffering in agony. Monument of the Heavenly Cock and Balls. No, that sounds stupid. Supreme Ice Cock and Balls. To short. Divine. MHH. Earth penetrating. No, MHH. How should I call it? I'm not good at naming landmarks. Maybe keep it simple and just call it Yuna's Cock and Balls. How come you can come up with technique names so easily but struggle with this? As I've already said, I specialize in technique names. MHH, is that the reason why your children had normal names? Yuna actually froze up when she heard that. That's right, why did they have such short names? Wouldn't long, awesome-sounding names be much better? I will definitely give my children proper names this time. Kurama shuddered as he felt Hinata's killing intent locking in on him. How does she know that I just messed up? There is no way she could have heard this conversation. Besides, she isn't even on this battlefield. Meanwhile, a few seconds earlier, on another battlefield, Hinata casually stored away a weird-looking weapon that looked like a scroll filled with exploding tags. Moments later, her head snapped into a specific direction while powerful killing intent burst forth from her body. A calamity just happened. I don't know exactly who is responsible for this, but they will pay for what they have done. Back on Yuna's battlefield, Madara and Hashirama were still looking at Yuna's creation in bewilderment. Well, that certainly looks like a giant PE. Don't say it, Hashirama. I'm aware. Everyone is aware. Hashirama chuckled due to Madara's annoyed mood and focused his attention back on Yuna and Naruto. Truly marvelous. After these two have reached our age, they will be invincible. I truly hope that they want to bring peace to this world and not rule it in a reign of terror. Madara clicked his tongue in annoyance as he focused back on Yuna and Naruto. When he heard Hashirama's words, he realized that this wasn't the time to enjoy the battle. He had a plan he needed to fulfill, and the fact that he was here as an Edo Tensei clearly showed that something went wrong. Nagato was supposed to use the Rinnegan to bring him back to life properly, but someone brought him back with the Edo Tensei instead. Currently, Madara didn't even know whether Nagato or Obito was still alive. Damn, has my plan failed? I shouldn't have allowed Yuna to get rid of the reanimation that tried to explain the situation to us. Besides that, where the hell is Black Zetsu? He should know what is going on, right? Meanwhile, Black Zetsu cackled in glee as he had just snatched a large pot containing the Kyuubi's chakra from one of the many battlefields. Somehow, the Silver and Gold brothers managed to get themselves sealed like idiots, which was an excellent chance for Zetsu to snatch the container, sealing him while nobody was looking. Yes. It's finally time to awaken the Gedo Mazo statue. With the help of the statue, we will be able to capture Yuna and Naruto with ease. As soon as we have captured them, I will take control of Obito's body and revive Madara, allowing him to become the Jubi's Jinchuriki. And then, Mother will finally return to this world. As Black Zetsu was traveling, he suddenly saw something massive in the distance. What the hell is that? Since when did the Land of Lightning have such a massive landmark? I don't think I have ever seen something that big before. He traveled a bit further, and as soon as he saw what exactly he was looking at, he tripped and fell, causing him to smash headfirst into the ground. He kept lying there for a few seconds, digesting what he just saw, before abruptly getting up. Why is there a massive dick that looks like it's penetrating the ground? Zetsu took a few deep breaths. Well, he actually didn't need to breathe, but it helped him calm down. He gave the monstrosity in the distance a few more glances before he came to a grave realization. In no way is Obito buried underneath that. Without a second of hesitation, he charged towards the giant dick in the distance. Obito, I swear if you were done in by such a ridiculous jutsu, I will desecrate your corpse. On a side note, if Yuna were here and knew about Zetsu's thoughts, she would probably say something along the lines of Zetsu wanting to save Obito from choking on too much dick. Anyway, back at the initial battlefield, Madara had a grave expression on his face as he realized that all he had worked for might have fallen apart. Despite that, he will continue pushing forward. The only way to truly find out what was going on was defeating the two people standing in front of him. Blue chakra started covering his body as a gigantic chakra construct coated his body. It started growing at a ridiculous pace, and only a few seconds later, a gigantic 100-meter-tall giant with 4 arms appeared in front of Yuna and Naruto. Playtime is over. Time to end this. Frankie, Madara half expected Yuna and Naruto to be overcome with despair when they saw his fully formed Susanoo, but considering how easily Yuna dealt with the media, that was obviously wishful thinking. Just like Madara, a dense coat of chakras started surrounding Yuna and Naruto, and only a short moment later, 2 100-meters-tall night-owled foxes appeared on the battlefield. Yes, it's finally time for carnage. I hope you are ready, Naruto, Kurama. Yes. The two Kuramas offhandedly noticed that Yuna said their name out loud, but they no longer cared. Finally, they could get their revenge on Madara and Hashirama. Besides, weren't these two be dying anyways, so who cared about them having heard Kurama's name? Hashirama could only smile wryly when he felt 3 abnormally powerful battle intents flooding multiple kilometers around him. He clapped his hands together, but instead of his whole body getting coated in chakra, complex black markings appeared on his face while a gigantic wood statue grew out of the ground. Sage art, wood style, true 1,000 hands. Moments later, another 100 meters tall figure appeared on the battlefield. A giant Buddha-like statue that had 1,000 hands growing out of its back. The appearance of the fourth giant figure was the start signal of a fight that could not have had less to do with being a shinobi. Chapter 501, Battle of Titans. Quite a few of the shinobi from the allied shinobi forces stood on a faraway cliff, overlooking the battle between four titans. Although they were very far away, considering the figures fighting each other were all about 100 meters tall, things were still somewhat visible to them. A battle between gods. While everyone was in awe due to what they were witnessing, one of the people present murmured these words under their breaths, causing those who heard them to nod in agreement. Every single move the four figures made changed the terrain, as bijudama were tossed around like they were firecrackers. A gigantic tornado constantly rampaged over the battlefield while soccer ball-sized hail was bombarding the ground. Hundreds of meters tall trees were popping out of the ground like they were common weeds, just to be slashed down by what appeared to be a single sword strike that seemed to cut space itself. However, all of that wasn't even the most terrifying thing about the battle they were witnessing. It was, ha ha ha, such a good dance. More. Ha ha ha, yes, let's continue dancing. Keep swinging those hips. It's been a while since someone could keep it up for this long. Yuna and Madara's madness-filled voices that were constantly echoing over the allied shinobi forces. Meanwhile, Naruto crossed his arms in front of his chest to block around 10 wooden arms that were punching towards him. Despite the attack sending him sliding backward, 2 additional chakra arms grew out of Kurama's chakra coating, producing 2 bijudama within an instant. They shot toward Hashirama's wooden golem, but before they could reach him, Madara appeared and sliced both of them in 2 halves with 2 of the 4 massive swords his Susanoo was holding. The other swords he was holding slashed downward toward Naruto at the same time. However, a single sword slash blocked their path and actually cut through Madara's chakra blades as if they were made out of paper. Madara clicked his tongue as this was not the first time one of Yuna's sword strikes sliced through his blades. Luckily, they weren't physical weapons, so he could quickly restore them by pumping a bit of chakra into them. Despite that, Madara really wondered how Yuna could so effortlessly slice through his weapons. In fact, the first time he saw that, he made sure to properly dodge all of Yuna's sword strikes. After all, if they could cut through Susanoo's blade, they could probably cut through Susanoo as well. By now, he could more or less guess why Yuna's attack permanently disabled the Ida Tensei. Although he couldn't understand what kind of principle was behind it, he assumed that Yuna had reached a level in swordsmanship so terrifying that it defied logic. Some might label him as irresponsible or reckless for simply dismissing it as incomprehensible, but what else was he supposed to do? In fact, every time his Sharingan witnessed one of her sword strikes, he felt like a blade pierced through his eyes. Simultaneously, Obito was frozen in place as he witnessed what was happening in front of him. He knew Madara was strong. Obviously. Everybody knew that. However, the fight happening in front of him was beyond incomprehensible. Although he didn't think that he had reached Madara's level yet, he thought that he could at least hold a candle against him. Unfortunately, he was wrong. Utterly wrong. Why is it like this? He isn't even using his Rinnegan right now. Why am I so much weaker than him despite possessing a Rinnegan and a Mangekyou Sharingan? If Madara's current strength was a considerable hit to Obito's mental state, the display Yuna and Naruto were putting on was pretty much a critical hit. Despite having to flee from Yuna and Naruto once each, Obito has always been looking down on them. In his mind, they were only some slightly significant figures he would capture sooner or later, but now he didn't even dare to say that as a joke. He got his hands on the Rinnegan, significantly increasing his power. Then, he used the captured Bijou as his puppets, increasing his war potential even further. With that kind of lineup, he was certain that he could capture Naruto. The end result? Utter failure. Despite that, Obito's morale wasn't in the gutter yet. After all, he had yet to fight personally. The power of the Rinnegan combined with his Mangekyou ability surely would be enough to defeat Naruto or Yuna, right? Yet again, he was proven wrong when he arrived on the corresponding battlefield. Two legends from the past, Hashirama Senju, the god of shinobi, and Madara Uchiha, the ghost of the Uchiha, were fighting on equal terms with Yuna and Naruto. In front of him was a battlefield he had little confidence in surviving despite having the Kamui, and yet the two people he wanted to capture were actively participating in said battle. Wasn't that a little too laughable? Boom. Another explosion almost shattered the eardrums of everyone watching the battle as a massive black chakra ball that had spinning shuriken-like wind blades surrounding it collided with four gigantic swords. Yet again, the terrain was changed as when chakra shredded everything into pieces while four deep gashes appeared on the ground. Madara and Hashirama gazed at each other for a short moment, and seeing the glint of madness in Madara's eyes, Hashirama could only sigh in resignation. Sigh very well, let's do it. A face-splitting grin appeared on Madara's face as he approached Hashirama. Are they going to kiss, Naruto? Are gonna cut the connection? Ha. I knew there was more to their relationship than it was told in history books. Ho ho tilde, so it's like that, ha? What a twist. Madara almost tripped when he heard Yuna and Naruto's words but decided to completely ignore them. As soon as Madara's Susanoo and Hashirama's wooden Buddha statues were close enough, they fused, forming a gigantic Buddha covered in Susanoo armor. Yuna and Naruto's eyes gleamed when they saw that. Let's go, Naruto. Oh. Yuna pointed her right fist at Naruto, causing a broad smile to appear on his face. Naruto lifted his hand as well and fist bumped Yuna. As soon as their fists touched, Kurama's chakras started mixing with each other. Although Yuna's influence had significantly changed the chakra of her Kurama, it was still very compatible with Naruto's Kurama since they had the same origin. Moments later, the two giant foxes vanished, turning into one even bigger fox. Yet again, the crazy laughter of two people echoed over the battlefield, and the fight was just about to begin when Madara and Hashirama suddenly started emitting white light. Madara widened his eyes in surprise when he realized what was going on. What? Someone cancelled the Edo Tensei. Hearing Madara's words, Yuna's eyes widened in surprise as well as anger started flooding her body. What? Who dares to cock-block this venerable one? Meanwhile, in a faraway location, a sneeze left Anko's mouth. Oh? Is someone thinking about me? Chapter 502, Easy Clap. It was a few minutes earlier, and Anko and Orochimaru were fighting each other in front of a hidden cave. No, today will not be a good day. These thoughts passed through Orochimaru's mind as one of Anko's punches smashed into his crossed arms, sending him flying into a wall, leaving an Orochimaru-shaped hole in the wall. What the hell is with this insane strength? I know that Sage Mode boosts physical strength, but this is ridiculous. Additionally, why does she power up to such a ridiculous degree every time I meet her? It's not like Anko is a little brat that hasn't gone through her growth spurt yet. Fully grown shinobi usually aren't supposed to get much stronger after they have fully grown up, okay? Orochimaru crawled out of the hole in the wall with a vicious expression on his face. He didn't hold the title of Sannin for nothing, so even if Anko was physically stronger than him, he still had a lot of tricks up his sleeve to get the upper hand. He subtly controlled the nature chakra around him, allowing a small hole to form in the ground underneath him. A small snake stealthily slithered into the hole that led to Anko's location. Meanwhile, Anko was cackling in glee. After all, she was granted yet another chance to beat up Orochimaru. How great was that? At first, she was slightly disappointed since he was only an Edo Tensei, which wouldn't feel any pain, but she quickly found out that whatever modification Orochimaru did on himself brought him to a weird state between being reanimated and actually being alive. Moments later, a small snake burst out of the ground right next to Anko's left foot. However, before it could bite her, the big crimson snake wound around Anko's body moved, biting the smaller snake to death instantly. Histilda. Hee, is my little Akane getting jealous that another snake is approaching me? Histilda. TSK, you a sailor? What's with all that foul language? Orochimaru clicked his tongue due to his plan failing. He really wondered where Enko got that crimson snake from. The last time they fought, it gave him quite a bit of trouble as well. As far as he could tell, such a snake did not exist in Ryuchi Cave. In fact, he had never heard of a snake that was capable of spitting fire. Enko noticed Orochimaru's gaze and chuckled in amusement. Her hand moved, and she immediately started petting Akane's head, causing the large snake to squint her eyes in pleasure. Hee hee, jealous of my cute, little Akane here. Too bad, you can't have her since we are partners. Here's Tilda. Hearing Akane's words, Anko's smile broadened even further as she added chin scratches to her head petting, almost causing Akane to melt in pleasure. Yet again, Orochimaru clicked his tongue as he prepared his next jutsu. Frankly, he was a little excited using this. Wood-style, deep forest emergence. That's right, since Orochimaru enhanced himself not only with Hashirama's cells but also with White Zetsu's, he could now use wood-style. Anko chuckled in amusement when she saw Orochimaru's attack. Considering it's supposed to be some kind of legendary Kekai Genkai, there is a surprising amount of people who can use it, isn't there? Here's Tilda. I know, Tilda, I'll stop playing around, Tilda. Anko clapped her hands together as obscene amounts of chakra gathered in her lungs while a ball of condensed white fire appeared in front of Akane's mouth. Man-beast flame cultivation combination arts, heaven-devouring wide inferno. Anko shuddered in pleasure as the ridiculously long attack name left her mouth. Oh yeah, that's the good stuff. Orochimaru sneered when he saw that Anko used the same jutsu she used to defeat him during their last encounter. He was certain that this time, the outcome would be different. The blazing wide inferno and the rampaging trees collided, and the trees were turned into dust pretty much instantly. What? Well, fire beats wood, that much is common sense. However, the trees generated by wood-style aren't just some simple trees. Every single one of them is imbued with massive amounts of natural energy, making them almost impervious to normal fire. Unfortunately, Anko's fire contained natural energy as well, offsetting what the trees had stored, reducing the contest to a fight of normal fire against ordinary wood. The outcome of such a fight is pretty apparent, as Anko's sea of flames washed over Orochimaru, burning him to a crisp. A light chuckle escaped Anko's mouth as she approached Orochimaru's body. Surprisingly, he survived the attack this time. Anko pondered the situation for a moment and quickly concluded that that had something to do with his body getting strengthened by Hashirama's cells and natural energy. Seems like you are still alive, dear teacher Tilda. Well then, time to finish you off for the third time. Before you do that, could you give me a minute with him? Anko frowned when her fun was interrupted and glanced at the two people who were responsible. She could only raise her eyebrows when she saw Sasuke and Itachi standing next to each other. She also offhandedly noticed that Sasuke was transformed into a woman, but she decided not to ponder on that any further. Or rather, she already knew that that was Yuna's fault. Why is Sasuke paired up with Itachi? He is clearly reanimated, so the duo fighting together is rather weird. My first idea would be that Itachi convinced Sasuke to fight against Konoha, but considering how loyal Itachi was towards it, that is rather unrealistic. Anko shook her head to get rid of her idle thoughts and focused on Sasuke and Itachi. Very well, I'll allow you to play with my toy for a minute, but you are not allowed to kill him. After all, that's my favorite part. While Itachi agreed to those conditions, Sasuke had an ugly expression on his face. This should be one of that monster's harem members, right? I guess I shouldn't be surprised that those that are willing to pair up with that monster aren't exactly right in the head either. However, for her to kill Orochimaru just like that, I really wonder where she managed to dig up this freak. Chapter 503, Making a Huge Mistake. After Anko allowed Itachi to do whatever he wanted, he stepped forward and kneeled next to his unconscious body. Technically, it should be impossible for someone who was reanimated with the Edo Tensei to lose consciousness, but due to whatever changes Orochimaru did to his body, that was not the case for him. Itachi kneeled next to Orochimaru, forced Orochimaru's eyes to open, and activated his Mangekyo Sharingan, putting him under Genjutsu. Moments later, Orochimaru started going through a string of hand signs. Anko got rather interested in what Itachi was doing, but before she could ask, she had to sneeze. "Oh? Is someone thinking about me?" Anko put that thought away and refocused on Itachi, who seemed to be done with whatever he was doing. "What did you make him do?" Itachi got up from his kneeling position and casually dusted off his robe. "I made him cancel the Edo Tensei so that all reanimated people can immediately return to the Pure Land." Anko's body froze up as her face paled and cold sweat started flowing down her back. It took her brain a few moments to truly understand what Itachi had just said, and as soon as it did, Anko's gaze snapped towards Itachi, making him take a step back. "Cancel this immediately." "They can't return yet." "Absolutely not." Naturally, Itachi was confused by Anko's sudden outburst. He was just about to ask her what the problem was when Anko revealed it herself. "Yuna is currently having fun fighting a reanimated Madara and Hashirama." At first, Itachi didn't understand the problem, but he understood what Anko meant after thinking about it for a few seconds. Each of her just stolen an interesting battle away from Yuna. Itachi had a similar reaction to Anko as his face paled and sweat covered his body. He couldn't help but shudder a little. However, Itachi was not known as one of the elemental nation's greatest geniuses for nothing and swiftly came up with a feasible plan. First, he approached Sasuke and gave him a deep hug. A little bit of blood started flowing out of his nose when Sasuke's breasts were squished against his chest, but he ignored that. "Be true to yourself, Satsuki. I support you in whatever you want to do or want to become. Never forget that no matter what happens to you from now on." Itachi hugged Sasuke even closer to himself, while Sasuke could feel something wet dripping on his clothes. In fact, he felt tears slowly spilling out of his eyes as well. "That will always love you. NNISN." That was all Sasuke could squeeze out as he was having trouble even breathing while suppressing some sobs. A few seconds later, Itachi let go of Sasuke and focused on Anko, who was looking at him with a hope-filled expression. Anko knew that Itachi was a genius, so she hoped he could come up with something to calm Yuna's wrath. As for the situation with Yuna, Itachi seemed to ponder the problem really hard, and after a short moment, he seemed to have come to a conclusion. He raised his right arm and pointed his fist towards Anko while pointing his thumb at the sky. A thumbs up. "Good luck." And then, Itachi crumbled away and turned into dust, leaving the body of an unknown shinobi behind. As soon as Itachi was gone, Sasuke's curse mark deactivated, returning him to his male form and making him sigh in relief. An awkward silence descended onto Anko and Sasuke as they looked at the corpse of the unknown shinobi. Only after a few seconds did Anko's brain reset, making her realize what was going on. "Fuck. I totally forgot that motherfucker was an Edo Tensei as well." Anko stomped the ground in anger, resulting in a powerful explosion that shattered the earth and split the ground, causing Sasuke to pale. "FCK, what's with that physical strength? Why is everyone around that monster a monster as well?" While Anko was rampaging around, she actually realized something else. After Itachi was informed about Yuna's situation, there were a lot of instances where he paused and pondered the situation. That fucker was actually stalling for time. "Fuck you, Itachi." Sasuke took some distance from the crazed woman and pondered Itachi's words instead. "I can understand the last part, but what did he mean by "I support you in whatever you want to become"? Somehow that sounds a little weird." He thought about it some more before he decided not to think about it too deeply. Sasuke was just about to leave so he could get away from Anko and look for another fight when he noticed the wet patches on his clothes which he previously assumed were Itachi's tears. Surprisingly, there were quite a few that were red, confusing Sasuke immensely. Was Nai-san bleeding? How is that possible? As far as I have seen, reanimated people don't bleed. Sasuke was genuinely confused by that discovery. After all, you could even cut off the head of someone reanimated and they would still be fine without losing a single drop of blood. However, Sasuke quickly came up with an answer. Well, it's Nai-san after all. It's only natural that he is special. Surprisingly, he came up with a conclusion that was used rather frequently on a certain person. Let's go, Sasuke, it's time to head to the final battlefield. Before Sasuke could think about it any further, Anko approached him and started talking with him, surprising him a little. Final battlefield. Shouldn't there be dozens of fights all over the nation? How come only one battlefield is left? That is correct, but of no relevance. After all, if we lose the fight we are heading for right now, then we will lose all other fights as well. Sasuke was pretty surprised by that revelation and continued listening to Anko for now. Uchiha Madara. That is the man we need to defeat. Sasuke's eyes shone when he heard that name. After all, there was probably no one in the shinobi world who didn't know it. I want to see it. Just how strong is such a legendary figure? How does he fight? What kind of abilities does he have? Maybe I can even steal a technique of two from him. Let's go. Anko snorted in disdain when Sasuke talked like he was in command and started running into the nearby forest without even knowing where he was supposed to go. Anko ignored him for now, finished off Orochimaru with a blissful smile, and collected her team that was hiding during her fight with him. As soon as she saw them, a dangerous aura started leaking out of Anko, causing all of them to shiver. In case anybody asks, Sasuke was the one to defeat Orochimaru. EA. But is that understood? Why yes, Midarashi-sama. Anko nodded in satisfaction and quickly followed after Sasuke. Who knows where he would end up if she didn't tell him where he was supposed to go. Well, he could just ask someone for help, but she doubted that Sasuke was willing to do that. Chapter 504, A Flag. Although Madara was surprised that someone managed to dispel the Edo Tensei, in the end, it didn't matter. Bunch of children playing with jutsu they don't understand. Madara went through a series of complex hand signs and a moment later, the white glow around him vanished. The Edo Tensei binds a summon to a summoner in a contract. As long as the contract isn't cancelled, whoever was called will stay in this world indefinitely. However, Orochimaru had cancelled the contract, so why was Madara still here? He basically took over Orochimaru's role as the summoner and now holds both positions in the contract. Hashirama sighed deeply when he noticed what Madara did and quickly copied his actions. He would prefer this conflict to simply end here, but it seems it wouldn't be so easy. Yuna sighed in relief when Madara and Hashirama both managed to anchor themselves in this world. Although she knew that Madara was supposed to know how it works from Hisoka's knowledge, Yuna had no idea if this Madara knew about it as well, nor did she know whether Hashirama could do it or not. Well, seems like there is no need to dish out any punishments. As these thoughts flashed through Yuna's mind, a shiver went through Itachi's soul, which had already returned to the Pure Land. Seems like it got resolved. She probably would have summoned me if it didn't work out, huh? Back on the battlefield, Hashirama was just about to separate from Madara so he could team up with Yuna and Naruto to defeat him when a seething glare landed on him, making him shiver. You better not think about suddenly switching sides, Hashirama told. Hashirama looked at the source of the voice and couldn't help but shudder a little when he was greeted by a pair of intensely glowing purple eyes. Sweat started flowing down his back when he saw the familiar side of a female Uzumaki glaring at him, with her menacingly floating hair behind her. There was only one thing he could do in this kind of situation. He sighed deeply while letting his shoulders slump in defeat. Unfortunately, he was rather weak against women with fiery temperaments. Madara chuckled in amusement due to Hashirama getting whipped in shape by a woman again, causing him some nostalgia. However, moments later, he shook his head to get rid of idle thoughts and lowered his stance, causing the Susanoo and the giant Buddha to do the same. Two gigantic glowing swords appeared in Susanoo's hands, while the Buddha's 1,000 hands started spreading out menacingly. Simultaneously, the giant nine-tailed fox grew 2 more hands on its back, and moments later, 2 monstrous spheres with shuriken-like blades appeared in both of them. Both of them were as black as the night and seemed to be spinning at high speed. Finally, a highly ornamented 2-handed sword appeared in its 2 hands, increasing the pressure it gave off even further. The first 2 attacks were Naruto's, who controlled the 2 hands that grew from Kurama's back. Frankly, he didn't have the chakra control to create 2 at once with 1 hand each, but since he was currently literally only controlling 2 arms while Yuna took over the rest of the massive chakra body, he could do it. He reeled back his arms and threw the 2 spinning orbs of death at the Madara and Hashirama duo. Massive twin Bijudama, Rasen Shuriken. The giant figure raised its 2 swords and vertically slashed down one of the orbs each. However, the swords got stuck about halfway through the attack instead of cutting through the chakra balls. Before they could explode, Hashirama made a move as his golem's 1,000 hands started moving. Around 100 of them moved in front of Madara and Hashirama, protecting them from whatever explosion might occur, while the remaining 900 shot towards Yuna and Naruto. Yuna, who hadn't moved a single step yet and had her eyes closed in concentration, took a deep breath as the atmosphere around her instantly grew colder. She opened her eyes as a glint passed through them and she started moving. She instantly appeared in front of Madara and Hashirama and moved her sword at lightning speed. Ice sword style, sword domain, infinite heavenly slashes. Yuna's swords blurred, and before anyone could understand what just happened, the sword returned to its initial position. Time seemed to stand still, and while onlookers perceived it like it took multiple seconds, all arms of Hashirama's wooden golem were shredded into millions of wood splinters within an instant. This time, it was Naruto's turn to make a move again, as he simply teleported a few hundred meters away to a position where he had previously planted a teleportation marker. Naturally, he took Yuna with him. Meanwhile, the 2 Bijudama and the 2 swords were still clashing, but while Yuna used her technique, Madara's sword faltered, allowing the 2 attacks to break through Madara and Hashirama's defense. Hashirama was still slightly stunned from having his golem destroyed. Madara should have easily found a way to dodge or block the incoming attack. However, he didn't. "Madara, what are you doing?" Naturally, Hashirama wasn't happy that Madara was slacking off, but when he saw his facial expression, he couldn't help but be surprised. Madara seemed to be completely dazed. Blood was freely flowing out of his eyes and nose, and he seemed to be incapable of perceiving his surroundings. Well, looking at Yuna's more flashy sword techniques with a Sharingan was not always a good idea. Especially not if it is something Yuna needed some time to prepare herself for. Without Naruto supporting her, that was not a move she would be willing to use in her current state. The 2 Bijudama found their targets, resulting in a massive, mountain-destroying explosion, which shredded the massive Susanoo-coated Buddha golem to pieces. The onlookers could only watch in awe as 2 small figures crashed into the ground in front of the towering figure of a night-owled fox. In no way did they actually do it. If Yuna had heard that random comment, she would have undoubtedly commented with, "That's a flag." Chapter 505, Second Stage. As soon as the onlookers realized what had just happened, the crowd immediately became rowdy. Holy shit, they actually did it. I never thought we could win so easily. Oi, stop raising flags. That monster fight was awesome, you know. Nevertheless, it's good that it ended so fast, you know. Could you people stop this? Man, I'm so relieved this ended without any problems. Please, stop. As soon as I get home, I will ask for my girlfriend's hand in marriage. Sigh, my wife is pregnant and I might make it in time to see the birth of my first child because everything went so well. Meanwhile, Madara and Hashirama's bodies were lying next to each other in a small crater. Despite both being reanimated with the Edo Tensei, neither of them could move their body, nor were they regenerating. While Madara looked a little constipated, Hashirama was babbling on and on about what had just happened. Ha ha ha, amazing. It seems like the new generation has already surpassed the old one. Good. This is how it should be. With these two standing at the top of the shinobi world, the elemental nation will finally prosper. Madara didn't answer Hashirama due to all the questions swirling around in his head. Where is Black Zetsu? Where is Nagato? Does he still have my Rinnegan? If not, who has it now? What happened to Obito? Where did these two monsters come from? What the hell is even going on? Simultaneously, Yuna and Naruto dispersed their giant forms and landed on the ground next to each other. Well, did you enjoy yourself, Naruto? Haha, of course, Ne-san. As expected, old legends like Madara and Hashirama are on a different level. Yuna nodded her head as she spread her sense around her, causing her to smile wryly. Well, it seems like it's time for the next part, huh? Naruto did the same and frowned deeply. Somehow, this leaves a nasty taste in my mouth, Ne-san. As soon as Naruto finished speaking, the ground around them exploded, allowing thousands of white Zetsu to jump at Yuna and Naruto in a wild frenzy. Yuna's sword split into two and turned into two swords without any ornaments. Even if she formed a new one every time she used her primary weapon, she still didn't want to use it to slay a bunch of small fries. It's only natural for you to feel a little disgusted. After all, we just fought two legends and are now forced to fight a bunch of insignificant clowns. It's like eating the world's best ramen just to be presented with a dry hamburger after you are done with it. Naruto nodded his head in agreement and offhandedly noticed that a rather dangerous-looking attack was flying towards their location. Or rather, it was flying towards the army of white Zetsu. Before any of them could react, a thin water beam sliced through dozens of Zetsu like they were made out of paper. Hinata landed next to Yuna with a somewhat bored expression on her face. So far, she hadn't fought anyone worthwhile, so she couldn't help but be a little annoyed. Seems like you were hogging the fun all by yourselves, Yuna, Naruto. Yuna chuckled in amusement and simply shrugged her shoulders. Well, you are here for the next part, so isn't it fine? Hinata pouted a little before her face returned to a neutral expression. Speaking of me being here, Karen overexerted herself and is currently recovering from chakra exhaustion. Oh, and since my specialty is white-scale Zetsu, she has dedicated herself to getting rid of the remaining white Zetsu, so she probably wouldn't come here either. Yuna nodded her head in understanding. In addition to these two, Yuna knew that Ino and Haku wouldn't make an appearance either. Haku was still exhausted from her fight with the third Raikage, while Ino decided to join the squad responsible for troop communication. It was her clan's specialty, after all. On a side note, one of Hiruzen's books was unsealed as soon as the Edo Tensei was lifted, so Hiruzen was probably already back in Konoha. Yuna did that as a bit of a measurement to see just how greedy he had become for Yuna's books. Anyway, there was only one person in their little group left that hadn't appeared yet, and as if she wanted to make her presence clear, a sea of white flames appeared and engulfed hundreds of Zetsu, burning them into nothing. Moments later, Anko landed next to Yuna with a broad smile on her face. Yo, time for the finale. Seeing Anko's wide smile, Yuna raised her eyebrows. It was relatively clear that something good had happened to Anko, and after thinking about everything for a short moment and reading Anko's expression a little more in depth, a smirk appeared on Yuna's face. Anko, do you perchance know anything about the Edo Tensei getting cancelled? To Yuna's surprise, Anko nodded her head in acknowledgement. Yeah, although I'm not sure why, a reanimated Itachi was fighting side by side with Sasuke, and just before I could reach them, Itachi forced Orochimaru to cancel the jutsu. Yuna's eyebrow rose in doubt. If that is the case, then why is she so happy? It seems like Anko is becoming more adept at mixing lies and truths together, but she is still far from perfect. Fine. Anko relaxed when Yuna said a fine, but stiffened at her following words. Since nothing happened, I've decided to believe your half-lie. Anko could only slump her shoulders at Yuna, seeing through her, causing the others to chuckle in amusement. What should probably be mentioned at this point was that the group of four was constantly massacring White Zetsu while they were bantering with each other. Enemies of that level were simply no threat to them. By now, there were White Zetsu pretty much everywhere, and even the people who were previously spectating resumed fighting. However, Yuna, Naruto, Hinata, and Anko were so deep on the battlefield that it was rather unlikely that anyone would reach their location anytime soon. That is, of course, if it weren't for a small group of elites that were approaching their location at rapid speed. Moments later, two green, skin-tight spandex suits appeared, quickly followed by a masked scarecrow. Naturally, these were Lee, Guy, and Kakashi. Yosh, today we will show the world our youth, Lee. Yes. My youth will burn the brightest. Yo. After Guy and Lee's explosive remarks, Kakashi's quickly followed, sounding rather bored, causing Yuna's group to chuckle. Moments later, a serious expression appeared on Yuna's face as her gaze landed on Kakashi. Have you decided what you want to do, Kakashi? Kakashi's back straightened when he heard Yuna's words, and a severe expression appeared on his face. Yes, I have decided. To protect the Obito of the past, I will kill the Obito of the present. Yuna nodded in acknowledgement as a ferocious smile appeared on her face. In that case, let's start the second stage. Chapter 506, Thanks for the Meal. Meanwhile, deeply hidden by the sea of White Zetsu, spatial fluctuations appeared, and moments later, a masked man emerged from a spiral pattern in midair and landed next to Madara and Hashirama. Took you long enough, Obito. What in the world is going on here? Obito clicked his tongue in annoyance at Madara's commanding tone but started talking nonetheless. Let's just say that the birth of a certain young woman messed up around half of what we had planned for the future. Naturally, Madara instantly knew who Obito was talking about as the image of a madly grinning woman with red hair popped up in his mind. Tell me what exactly happened. Obito was just about to start speaking when a thin water wire cut through an army of White Zetsu like they were made of paper, quickly followed by a white sea of flames that burnt an equal amount of them to ashes. Shit, no time for story time. The other monsters are here already. Other. There are more than these two. Obito really wanted to curse himself for letting that info slip. The less time they spent talking, the more leisure they had in reactivating the Gedo Maza, and here he was blabbering nonsense. They are not on the same level but monstrous nonetheless. Anyway, we have no time, so let's hurry up with our plan, or it will actually fail. As soon as Obito finished speaking, some of the White Zetsu cells that were replacing his right side flowed into Madara, allowing him to restore himself to at least some degree. The duo's eyes landed on Hashirama, who was still lying motionless on the ground while stealthily trying to gather some natural energy. However, as soon as the duo's eyes landed on him, a wry smile appeared on his face. Too bad, I was hoping I could pull something off while you were stuck in your drama. Oh well, I might disagree with whatever you are plotting, but I still wish you good luck, not as a shinobi but as your friend. Madara hesitated for a split second before regathering his resolve and smashed a seal-covered hand into Hashirama's chest. He might not be as proficient as an Uzumaki, but sealing an unmoving body away was no big deal for Hen. Shut up, you sentimental fool. Ha ha ha, see you in the Pure Land, Madara. Madara clicked his tongue at Hashirama's annoying personality and focused back on Obito. Can it be reactivated? Obito couldn't help but grit his teeth when he heard Madara's question. After all, the collection involved a lot of failures. We failed to fully capture the Ichibi, Hachibi, and Kyubi. We have most of the Nanabi and have the remaining beasts fully captured. Madara couldn't help but frown when he heard Obito's summary. Frankly, that was pathetic. He could see why there was some trouble capturing the Kyubi since he himself couldn't do it in his current state, but how in the world did they even manage to fail in capturing the Ichibi? Madara glanced to his left and spotted the Ichibi's Jinchuriki standing in the middle of the battlefield, flooding everything with sand. Should I capture him right now and add him into the Gedomaza? Madara chuckled at his own idle thoughts and dusted off his clothes. Well then, do it, Obito. For peace. For peace. Kuchio's no Jutsu. Suddenly, a gigantic smoke explosion occurred, and an eardrum-rending roar echoed over the battlefield. Before anyone could realize what was happening, a creature whose size could only be described as titanic appeared on the battlefield, scaring the lives out of anyone present. While Kurama's 100-meter-tall form was imposing, this creature was on a totally different level as it easily towered over a kilometer tall. Each of his two hands was easily taller than a fully grown Bija, and it had a menacingly looking single eye centered above a colossal mouth that could easily swallow something of Kurama's size. If anyone still had any doubts about the identity of the titanic beast, it had 10 tails chaotically swinging behind it, leaving no doubt about its identity, the Jubi. The shinobi present couldn't help but blanch when they saw the colossal beast. They had already lost morale when facing Madara's 100-meter-tall Susanoo, and now they were supposed to attack something 10 times its size. No matter how they looked at it, that was impossible. Meanwhile, the cage couldn't help but be in disbelief when they saw the monstrosity before them. They were told about the Jubi and supposedly knew most of the relevant information about it, but they never expected its size to be this extravagant. Even Naruto could only look at the giant creature in shock. He was more prepared than anybody else to face what was about to come, but when he saw the Biju's real form, he couldn't help but have some doubts about this whole situation. Was it really a smart thing to allow them to summon this monster? Can we really fight and win against it? With this kind of size, even Nasen should feel at least a little shocked, right? Naruto glanced at Yuna and almost soiled his pants when he saw her facial expression. He had never seen Yuna make such a crazy face before, nor did he believe it was possible to display so many extreme emotions simultaneously. Excitement, greed, battlethirst, joy, and most importantly, pride. Pride in who she was and what she is sure she will become. All of that was somehow discernible on her face. And moments later, Yuna started cackling in glee as she eyed the Jubi like it was a juicy piece of meat. You should have told me about this, Kurama. Huh? About what? That the Jubi is entirely made out of malicious natural energy. Is that of any importance? Of course it is, you dummy. Do you know what we called a being like this in my previous life? Although Kurama had digested a lot of information about Yuna's previous life by now, this wasn't one of them, so he only shook his head, resulting in a face-splitting grin appearing on Yuna's face. It's a treasure of heaven and earth. Thanks for the meal. Chapter 507, Finally, I'm back. When certain plants live long enough while absorbing loads of natural energy, they will evolve and become a treasure of heaven and earth. That basically means that they gain some minor form of awareness. What's so special about treasures of heaven and earth is that they usually have ridiculous amounts of natural energy stored inside them, and that said energy tends to be tainted somehow. In Yuna's previous life, cultivators would capture these plants, shred, cough or mollify their awareness, crush or refine out the taint, and plunder. Cough, cultivate the remaining energy. And as far as Yuna could tell, that was precisely what the Jubi was. Although she still hasn't started cultivating, couldn't she just store all the good stuff for later? Without waiting a single second longer, Yuna's chakra cloak returned, and she dashed towards the Jubi at high speed, starring everyone around her. Enne-san, should we attack that thing together? Don't worry about the details and prepare for the next phase. This one will be over quickly. Although everyone had some doubts about that, since it was Yuna who said it, they could only trust her with whatever she planned to do. Obito saw a single person approaching him and sneered in disdain. I knew she was arrogant, but to think she would even dare to attack the Jubi by herself. What arrogance! Obito clumsily controlled the Jubi, making it slap one of its hands on top of Yuna, but how could she possibly be hit by such a monotonous attack? Just before the palm strike could land, her figure vanished and she reappeared somewhere else. Naturally, there were plenty of teleportation markers spread all around. Due to that single slap, a gigantic dust cloud covered the ground around the Jubi, making it laughably easy for Yuna to approach it, and before Obito could react, Yuna shot out of the dust cloud and latched onto its stomach with her arms and legs. Let's see, what's the best way to store this? Well, that's pretty obvious, isn't it? I'd at least store it as far away from me as possible. I don't want to have anything to do with that screeching abomination. Yeah, chill, Kurama. 9 ice chains grew out of her back and stabbed into the Jubi's body, causing it to roar in anger. Considering the Jubi's size, the piercing wound the ice chains produced wasn't even comparable to a mosquito bite, but that wasn't the reason for its roar. As soon as the ice chains pierced into its body, a complex arrangement of seals erupted out of the chains and covered the area covered by them. I'm digging in. Yuna could feel tremendous amounts of natural chakra flooding into her body and getting sealed inside her mindscape, but compared to what the Jubi had, it was barely worth mentioning. Nevertheless, Obito started panicking when he realized what Yuna was doing. Shit, she is forcefully absorbing the Jubi to become its Jinchuriki. How is that even possible? Wasn't the Rinnegan the only thing that was supposed to control it? Stop speaking nonsense and stop her already, Obito. I can't, since I'm currently in the process of becoming its Jinchuriki. If I move, my connection with it will be broken instantly. Go do it yourself. Myself. SCK, I barely recovered enough strength to stand straight, and you want me to stop that monster. Whatever, I'll just become the Jubi's Jinchuriki. So what if she had absorbed some of its power? I will still be far above her. As soon as those words left Obito's mouth, a cold expression appeared on Madara's face. Would he really have to gamble on Obito being stronger than Yuna? Hell, Madara didn't even know how long it would take Obito to finish his endeavor. Seems like he is no longer useful to me. Black Zetsu, do it. Before Obito could ask what Madara wanted Zetsu to do, a hand pierced into his back and out of his chest, shocking him greatly. He tried to use Kanwa to phase through the attack, but he was currently connected with the Jubi, so he failed. And Madara? Kofa, why? Madara sneered in disdain when he saw the confusion and anger in Obito's eyes. Isn't that obvious? From the very beginning, I always saw you as a tool, and now that you failed, again and again, to do what I wanted you to do, you only have a single useful ability left. Black Zetsu's hand turned into liquid and covered Obito's body, resulting in one half of it looking normal and the other looking like Black Zetsu. The ability to bring me back to the land of the living, allowing me to become the Jubi's Jinchuriki. Black Zetsu started forcefully moving Obito's hands, making him go through a complex string of hand signs. As soon as Obito saw what his hands were doing, he started panicking. No, not like this. I refuse to die as someone's pawn. Not like this. Black Zetsu felt Obito's resistance getting stronger, slowing down the rate at which he could form hand signs, but in the end, it didn't matter. Rinna rebirthed. A roar of anger echoed over the battlefield as Obito felt his life energy getting sucked dry. Surprisingly, he felt like he didn't lose enough life energy to actually die from using the Rinna rebirth. He could only guess that that had something to do with Hashirama's cells. Anyway, a weird-looking creature came out of the ground in front of Obito and opened its mouth, causing something to float out of it. After a short pause, the tiny thing zeroed in on Madara and flew into his chest, causing him to sigh in satisfaction. Being in a reanimated state is not pleasant in the least, especially if one were to compare it to the feeling one gets after returning to life while simultaneously getting all your reserves filled to the top. The cracks on Madara's body vanished while his eyes turned into dust, leaving 2 empty sockets. Now that he was no longer reanimated, he would need to get his real eyes back. Despite losing his sight, Madara was delighted to be back among the living. Finally, I'm back.